feel like Jan would be proud. That was like decent gavel banging. Welcome everyone. So tonight is a special night of the Ann Arbor District Library Board of Trustees. We will be electing, or what is the word? Swearing in 2 new members and re-swearing in a 3rd member. So before we do that though, Karen, we're set on attendance? Okay, so I would like to introduce Judge Elizabeth Hines, who will preside over their swearing in. If you'd like to come up to the podium, it looks like we'll be starting with Dharma.
All 3 at once.
Oh, all 3 at once, okay. Sorry. So yeah, if you 3 are ready.
And I think they want you over on this side.
We're supposed to face this camera.
Yes, look at that.
Okay. Oh, we're getting that one? Yep, thank you.
All right. So, first of all, I consider it such an honor to do this. I've been asked for several years by Josie Parker, and I just think the library is such an important institution in our community that this is sort of a public way of thanking you all for the work you're going to do to protect such a community treasure. So if you could raise your right hand and keep it up after, and repeat after me. I, and state your name.
I, Dharma Ackman,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of member of the District Library Board
of the office of the member of the District Library Board
of the Ann Arbor District Library, Washtenaw County, Michigan,
of the Ann Arbor District Library, Washtenaw County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, welcome. I'm glad it's official. It's a long road from November to January somehow, where it's like, you know that you'll be joining us, but you're finally here. So, there's a little section on the agenda right now called President's Remarks. And I just wanted to take a minute because this is my last meeting as your president, which is something that I was talked into by Prue and Jan a few years ago. It's not something that I thought that I would want to volunteer for, but I have learned so much from doing it, and I hope that you all have the chance while you're on the board to do it, because Jan and Prue told me it would be easy, and I should just totally do it. There's a lot more to it, I think, than I realized, but all of that is really, I think it's like an excellent opportunity for growth as a civic participant. And I've really grown so much from working more closely with Josie. I mean, I have loved getting to know you better over the last 2 years, and partnering with you and Eli on things like they're the dream team, which I know you all know, but it makes so it's work, but it's very easy because of them. And then you all are just really incredible, and I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. Like, we televise these meetings. That's something that, I think we didn't think we would do a few years ago, and now we do it every month, and it's just the way it is. And we've I think, really rocketed forward in a transparency way. Like, the meetings are not only televised, they're also transcribed, which makes them really accessible to people. We have a more inclusive annual retreat process. And we've made lots of progress on our strategic plan, particularly goal 3.3, where we're advancing the mission of the downtown library, including tonight when we're going to talk about a presentation from HBM Architects we're eagerly anticipating discussing with you. So I think we've made a ton of progress. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it from meeting to meeting. Like, it's the kind of thing that I guess just takes a long time. But I have really appreciated working with you all over the last 2 years, because the thing about this is that you learn everything in real time in front of everyone, and that's like hard sometimes, but because of you all, it's been it's been like a really incredible experience. So I appreciate working with you all, and I'm excited to pass it on to whomever we elect tonight. So with that in mind,
One thing, staff in the room, there's something that I think we'd probably all like to do for Jamie, so join me. Jamie was staff here when she was in grad school. She was a public library associate. So we are particularly proud that Jamie's on the library board and has served as our president. So thank you, Jamie.
oh my gosh, wow. I have a little bit of a habit of crying at these meetings. I try not to do it tonight, but that really means a lot to me. Thank you. Thanks, Josie.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You're not getting off that easy, sorry.
Aha.
I just have to say that I feel very grateful for your service as president over the past 2 years, especially through a time of really incredible transition, both in kind of some of our activities at the library and also just in the leadership on the board. I think of your leadership as courageous and kind and diligent, and I'm always learning from you this wonderful skill of helping people feel like they've been heard, and I really admire you for that. You have just handled this position so marvelously, and and it is a lot of work. It really is, and as now the elder statesman on the board, I just want to say that I couldn't be more grateful, and I hope that you'll get a break from executive committee duties after this evening. But thank you, Jamie.
And Jamie, I want to add one thing, which is I could talk about how you listen to people even when they disagree with you, and you bring us together. But I don't want to talk about those things because we always say those things about women. I want to say that Jamie is wicked smart.
Oh.
She is.
Oh my gosh, you guys. I always feel like I'm a hot mess up here, so it was really validating. Thank you.
You
Okay.
always say such self-deprecating things, and you really don't need to.
Thank you. Okay, so should we move on to who's next? Who wants to do this next? Okay, so we are going to elect new board officers tonight, starting with the president. There'll be roll call votes. And I would actually like to nominate Lynn Song for the position.
I would second that nomination,
Thank you.
which means we can also discuss it now.
Right.
I think it's also important to know if there are others that are interested in this position at this point.
Yeah, I think formally we do one at a time.
Mhm.
So even if you bring up someone else's name in the discussion, we'll vote on Lynn, and then we would move on to that, if that makes any sense.
I would like to be an officer if that's appropriate, but I want Lynn to be president. I think Lynn will do a really good job of doing all the work, and she'll chair fantastic meetings and keep the executive committee meeting going. I worked with Lynn for, how long have I known you now? 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And running for office together, I enjoyed partnering with you and debating with you and making decisions with you. And you're smart and sharp and always have good ideas, and you listen. And I think it's a good progressive step. And Jamie's laid a great foundation over the last 2 years. So that's my thought.
Thank you. And I am also really happy to serve under your leadership, Lynn, as I was under Jamie. And I want to give a special shout out to Lynn's ability to sort of summarize and inspire people, which I think will be a great characteristic when you're asked to speak on behalf of the board. Your way you can bring things together and get to the heart of the matter. Thank you so much, Lynn, for accepting the nomination.
Further discussion? Let's vote on this.
Okay, Dharma Akman,
Yes?
Victoria Green,
Yes?
Jim Leha,
Yes.
Green Moore,
Yes.
Colleen Sherman,
Yes.
Lynn Song,
Yes.
Jamie Benbrook.
Yes. Okay.
One down.
Congratulations.
Boom.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
So you are installed in a moment here. So we'll start with, we'll go through everyone and then we'll switch up. Okay. So are there any nominations for vice president?
I nominate Jim Leha for vice president. Simply because I want to hear a speech.
Oh, gosh. I didn't get the speech.
I know.
I'll second it.
Discussion, is there a speech?
No speech. I'd be honored to be vice president. If you elect me, I don't have a choice.
Oh, I think Jim would make a great vice president. I think the two of you work really well together. I think you often are not you don't always have exactly the same opinion about something, and you have a really good way of coming to like a better place after your discussion. I really like how you push each other in the right ways, and I think you would work really well together.
Party.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion?
Dharma Achman,
Yes.
Victoria Green,
Yes.
Jim Leha,
Yes.
Green Moore,
Yes.
Colleen Sherman,
Yes.
Lynn Song,
Yes.
Jamie Vanderbrook.
Yes. Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, two more to go. How about treasurer?
I'd like to nominate Colleen Sherman.
I'll second that nomination.
Discussion?
I think it says a lot that it's coming from finance committee members.
Yeah, agreed.
That shows their faith in you and your skills.
That's so nice.
So Victoria, Colleen, and I have served as the Budget and Finance Committee in the past, for the past 2 years?
Yes.
And I think this is a great role for you, Colleen.
Thank you.
And I have all faith in your abilities to carry it out passionately.
If you vote for me, the meetings will be as smooth as they were under Jim's leadership.
Which is to say smoother.
Okay, great. Ready?
Dharma Achman,
Yes.
Victoria Green,
Yes.
Jim Leha,
Yes.
Green Moore,
Yes.
Colleen Sherman,
Yes.
Lynn Song,
Yes.
Jamie Vanderbrook.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
Just remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
You too, darling.
No, I think it's great. I mean, I think that not only on the board you have increasing inner experience with the area, like you also you're one of the people who deals with money the most outside of your board service, if you think about
That's
it.
probably right.
So I think it's a really nice tie with your professional experience too. Okay, secretary.
Does anyone want to be secretary?
I'd like to nominate Corinne Moore for secretary, for board secretary.
I'll second that.
I accept the nomination.
I'll just add a little something. Corinne's professional background as an attorney, I think, will be invaluable. And we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have strategic planning this year, and your insight and your community work would really you'd bring a lot to the table. So thank you for accepting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the moment you decided you wanted to run for the board, you were really impressive. Like, you were just ready right at the very beginning of thinking about, once you decided you wanted to do it, I was so impressed. So I think that you'll, become a natural member of the executive committee. And it's really nice to be able to switch out the people who can attend meetings and stuff, because, sometimes something comes up and someone's away or whatever. But anyway, yay. Okay.
Ready? Dharma Achman,
Yes.
Victoria Green,
Yes.
Jim Leha,
Yes.
Green Moore,
Yes.
Colleen Sherman,
Yes.
Lynn Song,
Yes.
Jamie Vanderbrook.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Great, congratulations.
Just read it at the same time.
Okay.
We just read it at the same time.
Okay, so you're just gonna read that out loud at the same time.
We can do this.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, go.
I, Corinne Moore, do solemnly swear that I will abide by the bylaws, rules, and regulations of my office as to the best of my ability.
Okay, I relinquish control to you. Here's your gavel.
Thank you.
I think traditionally we would like move around, but we're going to save that tonight. When next time we meet, we'll sit in our new spots. So,
Brilliant. Thank you.
thank you.
I don't bang the gavel though. No.
We did
At the end. Great. So, approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Or wait, discussion. Yes.
Got it.
Any discussion on the agenda? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Onto the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Any changes or discussion? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, no, I think everyone said aye. Good. Do we have citizens' comments?
We do. Mr. Allen Hitler?
Hello, Alan.
Hello, board. I'm a little apprehensive. I know I'm not the one person you're most enthusiastic to hear about. I represent the Ann Arbor Committee for the Community Commons, which wasn't one of your favorite ideas, but the people did say yes on Proposal A, and I am here. I was here first about 9 years ago, 2009, to first present the proposal for an Ann Arbor Community Commons when the city first put up the library lot with a request for proposals. And that proposal was not approved then, and we worked, and the people did in an election, as you all know, last November, decide that was the preferable and the best interest of Ann Arbor use of the library lot as a community commons, a central park, a civic center, and as a neighbor of the library. And you also are a community commons, and I'm really seeing how can we, as neighbors, develop this center of the city, which this block is now called, in the best way for everyone. I think we should be partners. I am eager to see what development you want to see in the library. Our view of the community commons is really a three-part structure, and maybe you have seen the picture that has been around that views a green roof over the surface of the parking lot, that views a terrace balcony over where the parking ramps go, abutting onto the property of the First Martin and connecting to the Liberty Plaza, and over Library Lane from Division Street up to the library, a several-story community civic center building. And some of the functions that we see as needed are also functions that you see as necessary. A municipal auditorium, a ceremonial room, classrooms. We're interested in having a visitor center. So if someone comes to Ann Arbor, like they would come to Yosemite Park, they go to the visitor center. See, what is this place? How are we located in the Huron River Valley watershed? What does the town look like? What is its history? And have ongoing classrooms about particularly sustainability and what people need to know about green ways of living and about what is the commons. And I hope you will see in your task of the library collection to begin to develop increasingly the language and literature of the commons, which is not like just any commercial place. We take Eleanor Ostrom's Nobel Prize winning book on the governance of the commons is that which is a community resource held in the tradition of the community, not by the government, not by the corporation, but by the people themselves, self-generating, self-creating, and taking care with mutual responsibility, mutual respect, and mutual benefit. And I know there are many questions about difficulties that you have, that the society has, and I read through in your survey the several pages of concerns people had about homeless and such who are around here. And that is certainly a concern I have as a community organizer, as a social worker. And I think these problems of the difficult conditions of our society and people in difficulty can well be addressed and made not as problems but as opportunities. And I would see this place in the center of the city also as a helpful place and as a healing place. When I first spoke, I said my vision, and there are many visions coming together, and we are in a process of a vision quest, looking back 7 generations and forward 7 generations, including all the people here. What really is the vision of a center of the city that speaks to the future, to sustainability, to the culture of peace and nonviolence. I think that's what we need to create together. And I'm basically here to say, well, let's find out how to do it where what we on our side of the Library Lane line can best cooperate and see what we do with you. And I hope you will see also to designate some liaison from your board or from your staff to work in an ongoing way with what we in the Committee for the Commons and the Library Green Conservancy and the City Council task force that has been created about this is doing. We need a close cooperation. We are all the Commons. It is a very important concept. And when I spoke, I was interviewed by a student from Community High about the petition process, and at the end of it, I asked her, so what do you know about the Commons? And said, well, they don't, what is the Commons? They don't teach anything. That's a problem of curriculum. The Commons is what people struggle for all over the world against the privatizers, for what is a public resource on which our survival really depends.
Sorry, Ellen, can I just put you on pause for a second? Karen, can you give us the time? Is it?
He's fast as
Okay, so.
Did I exceed myself? I usually exceed myself. Yeah. Is that it?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments, Karen?
I haven't received any at this point.
No? Great. So there's another opportunity at the end of the meeting.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you. And it's a three-minute limit. Great.
He was just there. Just there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can we have financial? So we're moving on to financial reports with Bill Cooper.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations to the new members, re-elected member, and the new officers. Before I get started on my report, I just want to quickly review the components that make up my financial report. This is primarily for the new members, but also a refresher for the other members. But my report has a narrative. It also contains the disbursements that you have approved in the consent agenda for the month. And it contains a budget versus actual statement, an income statement, and a balance sheet. So those are the components that make up my report. So I'm not going to go over November's since we didn't have a meeting in December. This report contains both November's and December's financials, so I'm just going to go over a couple of highlights for December. So we have received approximately 97% of our budgeted tax receipts of $16,186,497 as of the end of December. And we are currently revenue over expenses of $9,114,252. Our report is based on actuals and not accruals. We used to do an accrual report, and then last year the Budget and Finance Committee decided that we would switch to an actual cash accounting report. So these are actual cash numbers. Do I have any questions? And I'm free to, to schedule time to go over these in more detail with the new members, or, maybe you can join the Budget and Finance Committee.
Bill, I had a small question.
Yes.
Can you remind me the terms of the city lore grant, what that funding is for?
That was for a film that we purchased, and we have a narrator or a speaker when we show that film. So every time we show that film, we pay a little bit towards that speaker. So it's for that film alone being shown, for the expenses of that. And I think we've just about exhausted that money. I think we have a couple of more events planned to use up the rest of that grant. Anything else for me?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, committee reports. The executive committee. Remember when was, when did we last?
Oh my gosh. Feels like a million years ago.
November. It's back in November.
December.
Oh no, it was December. I apologize. It's like another lifetime ago, right? Yes, that's right. That was, we were getting ready to welcome HBM to give today's report, which will be after the executive director's report. I'm trying to remember what else we had discussed. I think it was just wrapping up the year. I don't, do you remember anything else? It's been so long. Calendar, yes. So if you notice on our board meeting schedule website, I think we're only scheduled out until March. Is that right?
We vote on it tonight.
Okay. So we're scheduled out until today, and then we'll vote on the remainder of the year tonight. We've been on the same night as City Council for the past 2 years. I think so. Is that right? Or is it
20 years.
Oh, 20 years. Goodness. That's more than 2 years. So a consideration that we can make is perhaps changing it or just maintaining our longstanding tradition. But this is something we need to coordinate with staff because availability on rooms takes priority. We're in high demand, and I hope the board takes priority, maybe, hopefully.
We spoke to different people about the calendar before you looked at the dates to make sure that it worked for the majority of people to keep it as it is.
Okay.
And it was affirmative back.
Yes.
So we did not have anyone asking us to
change
consider changing the night.
Okay.
Right. Or which Monday night.
And since we're televised, I feel televised is really the wrong word. Since we're filmed,
streaming. Yes.
I think there's less of an argument to
change.
Right, because if you are interested in both things, I think you can consume the content from both, and you can look at the agenda and decide which one you want to go to. The other thing we talked about is when to have the retreat. I remember now.
Yes.
Because usually we have it in like May, I think. But I think last year got pushed really late. So, and almost into like vacation time and stuff. So I think we talked about how can we avoid that this next time.
And then also the strategic plan is coming up. Right. So we're wrapping up the end of our 10-year strategic plan and starting into 3 years. I'm so sorry. 3-year strategic plan. I've only been here 2 years. Why am I saying 10? So we're looking at starting that process again. So it'll be an interesting exercise for new trustees. And the trustees that were here before, this was something that we had worked with Carrie from Bridgeport, as well as Francine. So this is the next phase, the next work. So I think those were the big items that we had discussed in the executive committee last we met. Good. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Jim?
I was not there for that meeting, so. No,
Okay.
So no.
Good. Moving on to Josie.
Thank you. So I'll direct you to the slides. The first one is the website from the African American Culture and Historical Museum listing their community service awards and their other awards from the December event where the library, Ann Arbor District Library, was named their Community Service Award recipient. This is a real pleasure for us and an honor. We really love working with them, and they say it back. And so we have done the oral history project with them now. This is the 5th year, Andrew? And we're looking at continuing on and what that might look like, how it might change, how it might be better. In addition to the online oral history project that you can see on our website, we have 2 events, or we've had 2 events a year around it. And one was at Mallett's and one was at Westgate, and I think the second this year was at Westgate as well, where people who have been interviewed for these filmings and recordings come and are honored, and it's wonderful. It fills up the space at Westgate, so it's always a real pleasure. So we're very privileged, we think, to be identified by them for this award. So my thanks to all the staff involved and to the library board for your leadership in helping us to determine that partnerships are a priority for the library. This is the downtown library lobby reflooring, which will be coming up. We will be closing the downtown library on the 25th of February for 10 days, perhaps a little longer, depending upon how the work goes, to recarpet the entire first floor from the elevator lobby to the street. So that elevator lobby in the children's room have been done in the recent past, but the whole front is going to be redone, including the Friends Bookshop. So their big sale is the Saturday before this, and they'll be unloading their shop into their big sale out in the lobby area, and then we'll be helping them clear it out. So you see, it's just kind of a rough plan of what will be carpet and what will be LVT, which is like the vinyl flooring that we have at Westgate. So we're going to be doing that. So this is a big project. So that's coming up.
And Josie, this is the first time we've had tile instead of just carpet in
Correct.
at least a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any concerns about that? Is there any pro and con?
Well, not after what we've experienced at Westgate. In terms of door count and what gets tracked in, no. This is a huge, perfect solution to a lot of like this time of year, wear and tear on that carpet.
That's terrible.
So we're looking forward to this change. So, and if you can see, it's going to wrap in front of the restrooms and over to the Friends. So where most of the traffic and all the way down to the elevator lobby will be LVT. So it will be easier to take care of, look better. Good question. Thank you.
What's the life on carpet? And
Oh, well, it depends on where you put it down and who's using your building. So, Lynn, what do we say? 10, 15 years at the most?
Manufacturer says 25 years. That's
AADL says 10?
yeah, 10, 15, walking quarterly.
Depends on where, I mean, this will be a shorter life than, say, the 3rd floor.
Mm-hmm.
And think about what this, because you're coming right off the street. So, yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. I'm so glad you're switching to the LVT. I mean, Westgate, if you think about it, that is one of the big things that makes Westgate feel like a little fancy. It's luxury vinyl tile.
That's what it is. Thank you for saying it, Jamie. Someone said it. I just call it LVT. We had the Whopper Championships, which are robotics teams from 7 local high schools in the lobby in December, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about that a little bit later in my director's report, but I just have to, you have to see it from the 2nd floor balcony. It was way cool and very loud. So, and congratulations to the winning high school combo, which was Steiner and Jonesville from Hillsdale. So it was really great. And many thanks to Joe Malcoon and Doug Song for being brave enough to take on the winning teams in an exposition match, and the older players lost. So good-naturedly, I will also say. Preschool Expo is something we've done for many years, and in a partnership, and it's been at Palmer Commons on campus. It has come to the downtown library. This will be its 3rd time, and it will be in the lobby. And this is a place for parents of preschool children to come and meet with all representatives from all the preschool agencies in the community and around the county, and talk to them about their programs, their fees, their hours, what they offer, so that people can have one stop to look at and see where they might want to send their preschooler. Watchdog Read author Michelle Kuo was amazing. She was one of the most outstanding Read speakers we've had, and we have had some remarkable people speak at the Read. her book, Reading with Patrick, was something that I think resonated with many of the people in the community from various professions, education, libraries, of course, just teaching in general, but reading teachers. There were many reading teachers there, social workers, physicians. It was an interesting crowd we had at Rackham on that evening. She was very gracious and wonderful. And if you haven't been to a read event at Rackham, it's great fun. Rackham is the most, it's so easy to be in that space, and everyone can see and everyone can hear. And so we were very, very pleased to have Michelle here. This was this past Sunday. We were the event sponsor for the women's basketball game against Ohio State, Go Blue. And these are some young ladies who were there with their showing off their scarves, and you can see the scoreboard, and also what do they call the thing at the top now? The scoreboard. There's a scoreboard above the arena, and then I'm trying to see the difference, Eli. It's that one. Is that the backboard?
This is on the backboard.
On the backboards, right. So we were all over Chrysler Arena, and we had a fun time. It was a good time. Good times had by all. And I think what they say, almost 6,000 people attended this basketball game, which is a lot.
Is it the first time we've sponsored a basketball game?
Yes, it's our first time.
The logo looks great.
Thank you. Thank you.
And everybody got
and
a
there's
scarf?
The first 1,000 people through the doors had a scarf.
That's great.
And if they missed it, they came to our table and begged. And Eli and I gave ours away. And so we said next year. So we have a little video for you to see. Right.
This is what showed on the screen during our timeout.
Oh, cool.
The Ann Arbor District Library is the best deal in town. Theremins, metal detectors, synthesizers, giant games, spinning wheels, anatomical models, replica human skeletons, you name it. What would you expect to pay for these? $500? $600? $1 jillion? At AADL, all these items can be checked out for free. That's right, just 4 easy payments of $0. Come on in today.
Use your library card to take advantage of these deals. Visit aadl.org/tools for more information. If you still have books.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really good.
We had so many people coming up and who live here in Ann Arbor who were like, yes, we have a library card. We have very few people who live in Ann Arbor who said, I never used the library. That wasn't it. But we had a lot of people from a lot of other area around us from a distance away who were the library. We had a telescope, we had a sewing machine, and we had one of the little cute kitty pianos. And it was a lot of fun to stand there and go, yeah, at the library. Yeah, we do, the library. So it was good.
Who was the voice?
Several. Al Scherzma, and was that you at the end? That was Matt at the end? Yes.
Brilliant.
So, just a brief rundown of projects and initiatives underway. Mallett's, Traverwood, and Pittsville, we have meeting room bids have been accepted. The construction schedule is being finalized. We're looking at that possibly occurring. Each location will close one branch at a time for reflooring, reshifting of material, changing up some of the shelving. And in this project, Mallett's will be organized by BISAC the way Westgate is. So it's going to be about a month for each one and 6 weeks for Mallett's possibly for closure. So only one at a time because we can't have more than one down at one time. We're looking at that happening shortly after or right at the end of the lobby work, correct? Right. We participated in Cook Ross unconscious bias in hiring for our managers and supervisors. We did that in December to a person. And there were 25 or 6 of us involved. To a person said it was outstanding, amazing. The person who led it was incredible, and we were all of us came away very glad it happened. Very glad that we did it. And the way I can say to you, I know how successful this was, is we're all still talking about it with each other. And with, what do you think of this, and how would you react to this? And that is the success of this. We will take this training to the entire staff in an abbreviated form on our staff day in November. The 4th floor staff area will also be done, and our planning for that is done. We'll be completing that work also in this fiscal year, but it's not public area, so it won't affect opening. And this is the last of the 1990 building that has not been recarpeted, reorganized, and so we're getting that done in this fiscal year. So that's happening. That's coming up too. So a lot of people up there are looking forward to how that's going to be reconfigured and how their work areas are going to be much more efficient and modern. So.
And Josie, I don't recall if that came to the board, and that's because the cost of it was under our threshold,
It's
correct?
part, it did come to you, and it's part of the approval for the capital fund for work that's done on the library. Yeah.
Can you tell me where that came into us? I just don't recall that.
In the budget process.
In the overall budget,
An overall
not in
budget.
the
No,
overall
it's an overall budget process, right? Overall budget process. It was one of the things listed as this will happen this year.
Yep.
And that's part of it. So there were no bids on this?
Yes.
And the reason is because the company, the place where you get the equipment, there's one. And so we don't do bids for this. We just get the design of it, and we get it, we work through the negotiate, and we organize it, and we order it, and we get it done.
So it's not a competitive bidding
No,
process
no,
because
it's
there's
not.
one vendor.
That's right. Correct. That's
This
right.
doesn't include plumbing, the plumbing.
No,
issue.
this is carpet, and this is furniture and paint.
So no work will be done on the Crocs.
No.
I just had to say, the first meeting of the new year.
No, none.
I want to be the first one to
No,
say it.
none.
Plumbing has always been
None.
There was flooding from into the third floor staff area at one point. So that's what it's, yes, Eli knows this. So that's where, it wasn't prop related.
No, this was a
Separate plumbing issue.
This was a separate plumbing issue. This was a
Yeah.
pipe that was, yeah, right, different, not sewage.
Okay.
No. And the last one is the relocation of the WLBPD digital cartridges to the state library has begun. We heard from them this week about how quickly they want to receive that material, and we'll be working through that process with them. And when that's done, then we'll relocate the Friends storage area to that area, and we will put our material next to the back of the secret lab for access in and out of the secret lab on the staff side. So, did I answer your question, Victoria?
Yes, you totally.
Okay, thank you. These are for Dharma and Kareen's information. We highlight the public and staff comments that come up, usually through social media to us about a number of different things at the library board meeting. So this one is from Michelle Quo, thanking us for choosing her book and having her speak in Ann Arbor. She was a Michigander. She was raised in Kalamazoo. And so she was here visiting friends, and so she's very happy to be here. This one is, these are two different people very excited about the tools collection. And this one is a person letting us know they're very happy that we're an awesome place of wonder, and letting us know they would be there every day if they could be there. And the other one is someone talking about having 3 kids, 2 who read, and how the library actually helps save their family a lot of money. And this one is a new resident of Ann Arbor who, I love this one, just made our first pilgrimage to our at AADL branch, and I am in love. And we know he was at Westgate.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then story time. Someone was at a story time where Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger Music were part of the story time, and they had to say something about it. These are, I'm trying to remember. These are things that were done in the block printing class, letterpress lab, and so they're examples of things that were done. Did we get that letterpress piece to the board members that Jody did?
Did we have any extras of that?
Jody Harnish did this lovely letterpress work that's a poem from Reading with Patrick that Patrick wrote about reading with Michelle. And because he was in prison when she was visiting him and doing this. And Jody took that and made a lovely commemorative booklet for her, and we had a lot of them. So we'll make sure you get a copy. So.
Thank you.
And I should be reading my notes. I'm just looking. This is a father who was at Trevorwood when there was a little bit of snow, but they called it snow, 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 and now here we all are with a lot more snow. And his little girl clearly was watching it saying snow, snow, snow. This is a young man who is all about reading. And this is a person who found a nook at Westgate to settle in and read. This woman is letting us know that she's finishing her first degree. And she's worked on it in a study room at Westgate. And we know what this is. This is the chess set downstairs. And here we are back to the robotics championship. And I'm going to tell you that just get your ears ready and go ahead. So the idea is it's volleyball. It's volleyball. And so each robot is controlled by a different school, and the schools are in pairs. And that's how that worked. And so, and it was quite loud. And on the side you couldn't see. You were looking out at the Fifth Avenue windows. On the side you couldn't see were bleachers, just like at the racetrack. And they were packed full of people cheering on their high schoolers. So it was I think we had 800 people come through the afternoon that we know were involved with Whopper. So it took over most of this building, all of the rooms like this, or their team prep and their work they had to do with their robots, and we had them spread out all over the place. It was a good use of the building, but it was pretty much how the building was used that day, except for the computer lab and the children's room. So, thank you. My report. If there are questions, I'm happy to answer.
I guess one thing I wanted to say is that the robot tournament made me realize how nice it is to have a really high ceiling space, because it made that activity feel like it was really nice. Like people could be on the second floor and look down into it, and then when you were down in it, like you had a lot of height to kind of let the energy escape. So it made me think a little bit differently about our future and stuff in a way that I hadn't before. I mean, you couldn't do that in here. You'd feel like crazy, even though it's not like you needed the ceiling to do the activity.
But it was nice to have this.
Yeah, it was kind of like nice.
I like seeing so many teenagers.
Yes.
Here.
Great.
They were here to cheer each other on. They had banners hanging from the second level. It was really impressive. And they were the ones who were, not moderating.
Oh yeah, right. They were like
They were.
Yes.
They were in charge.
They were the ones who were. They were fantastic. There was a lot of really good energy, and the parents were on the sidelines. It was really teen-led, teen-controlled. Any other questions for Josie? Great. Thank you, Josie.
Thank you.
New business. Is this a motion for meeting dates? Yes.
I move that we adopt the calendar as laid out on the last page of our booklets, page 44.
Second.
Discussion?
Does this, this is the time to say if there are issues that the schedule poses for you in any particular way. I think it's important to note that, and I think it says this in the document, that last year we canceled 2 meetings, which would have been December meeting last month, and then August. Typically when people tend to be leaving Ann Arbor and going on vacations of various kinds.
But also it was because we didn't really have
We didn't have new business, yeah.
either, I think.
And we adopted it at the beginning of the year, but then we canceled the month before based on a vote. And that was simply because what is their business? Okay, there's not a huge amount of business in August and December. We'll cancel the meeting.
Right.
And I don't recall hearing that that was an issue for anyone, although I remember talking about the August meeting and the summer game and points in some way.
Yes, good point.
Because people come to speak, right, at the
Right.
meetings to get points.
I don't recall, did we hear whether, or have any additional information about whether that was a hardship for people last year? Or was it a non-issue?
It's really only an issue if it is canceled late.
Mhm.
If they know the July meeting is their opportunity. It's not typically the issue.
Is there anyone who I know that you brought up the idea of changing the day of the week, and I don't know if there was other conversation to be had about that.
No, I mean, if everyone's available for that Monday, and it's a 20-year tradition.
Yeah.
I'd hate to.
Monday is my bowling league, but I will make the sacrifice. And Eli is on my bowling league, so it's his sacrifice too. But it's okay. We have bigger teams to accommodate the library board.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
It's tough.
Can I ask, the February meeting is President's Day weekend, which is an Ann Arbor public school holiday. Does anyone, I'm fine with that, but is it an issue for anyone else, or enough of us that it's an issue?
I'm good with it.
Good with it?
Anyone else?
Not going anywhere.
And then Josie, are there any other conflicts with holidays or?
No, it's generally, we avoid MLK Day, and President's Day, generally, we have the meeting on President's Day because we're not closed.
Okay.
And we will be, Veterans Day, we will be closed for Staff Day, which is a Monday, but we are open in October on what was Columbus Day now, or more locally known as Indigenous Peoples Day. We're open that day. And we'll program that day the way we did for MLK Day yesterday.
Great. Great.
And I will say this, the December date's earlier because the week of the Christmas holiday tends to be a difficult week for people to meet. So we move it up on purpose.
Okay.
I would also just remind everyone, of course, that obviously people have schedules that they occasionally will need to miss meetings, and it's important for us to achieve quorum and to know that in advance. That has not been an issue typically, but a quorum for us is four. Yeah.
Unless there's a certain type of vote, and then it's 5, but we would know that ahead of time.
Great, thank you. So I guess I'll call it to vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Let's see, moving on to the welcome a motion for the Board Budget and Finance Committee appointments. Is this a discussion?
So Josie, remind us how this works exactly.
The president appoints.
The president appoints
The
Budget and
president
Finance Committee.
appoints, and it's the president appoints, and it's at the president's discretion who serves on the finance committee.
Right.
And the way that your bylaws are written now, it's your only appointed standing committee.
Right.
Right. So
there's no nominations.
No, and the treasurer of the board is generally the chair of the finance committee, and then you appoint 2 other people to serve on the finance committee.
And we can't exceed.
We start our budget preparation now.
We
Because
can't
it comes to
exceed.
you as a draft in April, and you must vote on it in May.
The committee can only be made of 3 people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
I do think it makes sense that the treasurer would be on the committee. Please.
I would like to be on the committee.
And it has been, as I mentioned earlier, it has been Victoria and Colleen and me.
Right. So with that.
Yeah.
So we have Colleen as treasurer, and if if you don't mind, my additional appointments would be Dharma and Victoria.
Terrific.
So we have a committee of 3.
Great, thank you.
I'll accept your appointment.
We have to vote on that.
Yes, we do.
But seriously, I think that's a great committee. I think it's a great committee moving forward. I like that there is some continuity, but also some new folks,
Actually,
because it's a good way to get enmeshed in some details when you're feeling like there's a lot going on around you to be able to focus on finance.
It's appointment, but it looks like we approve it. We vote.
We
to
approve.
Okay. I move that we approve Lynn's appointments.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Any opposed?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm not on the Budget and Finance Committee anymore. It's been like, I've been on the committee, I think, for all 4 years that I've been on the board, so yeah.
Okay.
Congratulations, everyone.
Yes, congratulations, and thank you, thank you. So moving on to HBM, can you please come to the podium?
So I'd like to introduce Peter Bullock and Renee Moldavansky from HBM Architects out of Columbus. Cleveland. I do that every time, and I don't know why I do that. Cleveland, Ohio. There's more than one big town in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
So thank you very much for being with us this evening and making a trip up during what was probably some harrowing weather.
It was.
Yeah.
Got a little crazy. Well, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to first start by welcoming and congratulating the new board members. And for the standing board members and Josie and Eli, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to work with the library to create this building program. You all have a copy of the building program. It's in draft form. And tonight I'd like to just hit the highlights for you. So as you further dive into it and study it, you have a little bit of better sense of how it was created and what it was intended to do, and maybe from your reaction or questions and comments today, maybe some fine-tuning of it. But the program is set out to outline really what is desired in a downtown library. And as we worked through the process, we worked with the administration, the staff, we had a couple of board engagements, and with our staff bringing forward kind of trends in libraries, where things are going, along with your library's thoughts and knowledge of where you've been and where you'd like to go. All of that boiled down to this report or this program that you see here. So, Eli, what do I just... okay, all right. So obviously, table of contents, it's a pretty succinct document. There's four parts, really. Introduction part, a summary, and then the main part of the building program outlining spaces, recommendations, adjacencies, begins to talk about cost, and then the last step in the document is what we would call next steps. And what we've done for this presentation, because you're not going to read the text on the screen, we've put a large number of the page that we're on in the top left of the image. You can follow along in your booklets, and if you have any questions along the way as well, you could please interject. So the introduction basically describes where you've been and where you're going. In general, I think the notion is that the library is growing. And there's some statistics here that demonstrate that. There's one that is slightly down from last year, and that's circulation, but it's not down in a large way. And it's not uncommon with libraries, because today we're really doing a lot more than just providing material. There's a plethora of programs that are being conducted. And so when you look at the number of events, the attendees, visits, and all of this in general, things are on the rise, and so things are growing with the library. And what that means then is you need to look at how your building is working today, and some things you can do, like the events you do in your laboratorium, and maybe some events you can't do there, and how then you can look to create a building program that will allow you to do the things you can't. In this page, and the two summaries, page 5 and then page 11, we start to talk about some of the things that you'd like to do in two different categories. One being short-term spaces that are needed, And then the next category is basically looking longer out, long-term space needs. The short-term space needs, this outline here, bullet list, is really described in detail in each category in the packet or in the booklet. But it talks about things like, let's take, for instance, the building exterior. What type of things might you be thinking about incorporating on the exterior of your building to invite or welcome in or create a presence in the downtown that would be desired? And so maybe it's transparency, maybe it's a lot more openness, ability for people passing by to see activity within, and then people within the library, obviously, for spending time there for natural light and views out. We talk about site considerations, outdoor spaces, all of these things that would need to be considered when you think about a library building today in an urban environment. The different components within it, the cafe, the shelving and collections, how that's housed and browsed, and you talk about incorporating different types of environments, the bisect development that you've been implementing in some of the branches. All of these things are what we would consider probably the short-term space needs, the needs that we know already that we'd like to do in a library. And some of these things you can do here, and some of these things you can't do in your existing facility. Going on to the long-term space needs then, these are things that we really don't yet know about. Or maybe we know that are coming, but we don't know maybe when they would be implemented or when the library programs would start to need these things. And so I think the most important thing in a long-term space needs is to define a program that can be implemented with built-in flexibility for continual change and adaptability. Looking at the use of furnishings or elements that can be reconfigured, demountable partitions, so that as spaces need to change as you evolve, they can be easily done, and they're not hard components like maybe you have now where it takes a jackhammer to change and reconfigure. Innovations in infrastructure, so how is the building set up to be, again, easily adaptable? These are the things that are longer term things that we need to build in now in our thinking, so that as they come to be desired to be implemented, they can be in an easy way. So as I said, all of these components you can read through. They have definition, more description about what they are. And then when we start to look at the building program or the spaces within a library, they're all defined with their names. These two sections, page 16 and 17, talk about meeting space. We have large meeting space, we have medium meeting space, and small meeting space. But each space within the library and in this program is defined by 4 different categories. It talks a little bit about what it is, what that space is, the description of it. The next section is about its functionality. How does it need to work for the given use that it's there for? The next category is what components need to be considered within that space. And then the last section defining that space would be adjacencies. And adjacencies are where would that specific space be within the building? Where does it need to be next to? How do the spaces perhaps play off of one another for the best utilization of the space and the intended need? So each one of those different types of spaces is defined like that. In this section we just snipped out the collections on page 22. One category right now that you don't have in your current building, it's off-site, is the archives. And there was some discussion about bringing that back into a downtown library. So that's been included here, again, with its description, its functionality, components, and adjacencies. And then the next section would begin to help us understand, and you as you look at this document, what your existing conditions are like. And so we begin with this this document here, which is basically a plan of the downtown district area of Ann Arbor. And the orange square in the middle there is the current library. And we developed this diagram so that it is better understood about how much maybe space need there would be for different types of applications of a library building. And so right now, I'd say you're occupying about a quarter of a typical downtown Ann Arbor city block. And as we move forward in this document, you'll see that's important because the three squares on the right, we looked at the potential of maybe a small, a medium, and a large site if you were to look at this as a new building and maybe on this existing site or maybe a different site. You'll better understand with this document then what type of space you would like to have and the constraints or the benefits it could be having to the building program. And we also went through the entire building and quantified your current space usage. So for us to be really able to understand how you operate, the things you're doing within the square footage you currently have, and then to be able to realize some limitations or some things that are working well. So this is just an example of the first floor, and it has a table that quantifies the areas of square footage. It also defines a little bit for everyone, a little bit the area breakdown between public and staff and auxiliary space. And so we've included that in all all the floors of the library. And right now, the building currently is about 110,000 square feet. So that's just their benchmark. So I come back to this diagram, this plan of the downtown Ann Arbor, and again, the existing building in the middle. When we talk about the spaces that we'd like to incorporate into a library building, an urban library, we have a sense of where they go by those adjacencies, and then we also have a sense of the size of them given the need and what we're trying to do. And what we thought would be important is we developed three concepts, an A, a B, and a C, based on a different site footprint, so that then you can better understand that all of the stuff that you want to do in a new library, if you had a larger footprint, like the A example, that building might be able to have better adjacencies because you'd have less number of floors to put everything in. And so in that particular case, maybe it's a basement level, and then main level and a second level. And you might be able to do what you're looking to do all on two levels in that situation. And so those adjacencies can be maybe handled a little differently. Then if you went to a smaller site like B or C, you can imagine that that program, to fit all of that in a smaller footprint, would require more floors. So taller building, less opportunity to have maybe ideal adjacencies because you're limited to that floor area. So given, again, we'll look at an option A here, that we have a large footprint of space. This document, this diagram here, starts to show you of those spaces that are included within the building program, how they may be arranged, what they may be next to, how they progress as you enter through the front door, what do you come to first and what comes after that, and how they work off of each other. And this, because it's concept A, had the large, basically was a half of a city block in its footprint, would mean that you could do a 45,000 square foot footprint, which is your floor plate. And in this particular case, you can accommodate what we're thinking and have discussed as your total square footage within a basement and two basically public floors. And when you look at these bubble diagrams, you know, every label on this diagram is defined in a narrative about what it is, what it includes, its functionality. But when you look at it here, these are relative in size to each other. So in other words, you know, if your entry plaza or your entry lobby is, you know, 1,000 square feet and the cafe is 250 square feet, I'm just picking those numbers, you you can get that from looking at this diagram that the lobby is 3 times bigger than the cafe. And when we look at these adjacencies and these diagrams like this, we're not suggesting essentially a design. This isn't designed. It isn't have all of the considerations that you would want to bring to this in terms of its creative look and feel. It really is strictly talking about if this space has to do this, what are the spaces around it doing, and how do they work together, and is there a flow that has to happen between one another. So just a couple of things to highlight here. I think the idea of coming into a lobby, maybe it's right there is a cafe, the Friends area. The little bit of a grayed out space is what we're calling the large event space. And in this program, we talk about it as perhaps a space that can be entered from an upper level and then entered into it as it goes down into the lower level. And so, as you spoke earlier about the environment where you can have a space that can be viewed from above and have activities in there, those are some things that you can begin to realize in a diagram like this where you have that across 2 floors. In these diagrams, you'll also see that in this floor, the staff workroom is in the top quadrant there. When we move to the 2nd floor of that document, it's located adjacent or above that. And so, again, adjacencies aren't just about what's on that floor and what's next to each other, but when you think about it vertically, organizing things so there's more efficiency of use of the space for your staff to be able to do things a bit more easier. So all of these help you better understand how those spaces would relate to one another on a specific footprint. And so the next adjacent diagram is the B, which is about the current size of your existing space, maybe a quarter of a city block. And you can see here that you start to get a bit more of a condensed bubble diagram, right? You can now begin to understand with less footprint, you have to start to squeeze this stuff in more, and not as much stuff is on one floor as the diagram A. So in this document, or in this concept B, to develop the program and to fit it in, you're looking at more likely 3 floors now with a basement, whereas A was 2 floors in a basement. And then the last thing we looked at was even if it were a bit smaller in site. And this, as you use this document, and whether you use it for this building or a new building and a new site, you may have a great opportunity where a smaller site becomes available, and there's benefits to that. And then you can look at, well, how does that then work with my building program, and what type of trade-offs might I need to be considering, and evaluate that in that way. So you can see here on a C, on a much smaller site, you can still make it work, but now we're suggesting about 5 floors in a basement, and even a little bit more dense or combined elements, and not as many elements on each floor. Okay. Then we come to a section that begins to bring quantified analysis to those 2 categories I just mentioned. The narrative of the space, which describes what it is, how it has to function, what's in it, and then its adjacency. And then the bubble diagrams, which suggest how those adjacencies might work. You have this table, which begins to define its square footages in a quantitative way. And so this diagram we've included, the 2nd column is your existing square footage. And so a lot of the building program elements you have already, and they may be, there's a couple of things that have been kind of made a little smaller, suggested to be a little bit smaller, but I think in most cases everything is been increased. So you can see relative to your current footprint and the things you're doing, the square footage you have, and then the suggested new square footage based on knowledge of discussion with the library and trends within libraries, where things are going and what you would like to do. There are things on this document that are new. that you don't currently have, and those are demonstrated too as well with a new square footage. And as you get through the document, at the very end on page 61, it totals these spaces. And as I mentioned earlier, the current building is 110,000 square feet. And the process we've gone through with the library in discussion and evolving document here, we're suggesting perhaps about 150,000 square feet of space to really do what you're looking to do in the short term, those short-term needs. And then also, when you designing carefully so that you're building in flexibility, and those longer-term things that we really don't know can be easily adapted. So 150,000 square feet is where we're arriving at here with this document.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is our current footprint most like B?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's about a quarter of a downtown block. So the last category or section of the document begins to talk about cost, and to segue into that, I wanted to reference this document. This is not included in the building program document. I think you have it as a separate document. But it is a document that will help you a little bit better understand some of the current things happening with libraries and their relative costs and perhaps scale. All these that we've cited here are urban libraries, in many cases similar to Ann Arbor, and some maybe a little bit bigger, but there's not everything's not apples to apples. But the first example is the Tulsa City County Library. It was completed in 2016, and its total square footage is 145,000 square feet. Its budget was $53.5 million and about $368 a square foot. So again, we wanted to provide you with some peer comparisons, if you will, to better then understand if we're talking about 150,000 square feet of space in an urban environment, what are those costs?
And their programs are comparable to our programs?
I think in general they are. I think that this is the first library with the tools library that I've seen as really prominent and used. But every library has maybe their kind of nuance of element that they really highlight. And I think that in general, I think you can look at it as a balance between book space and people space. And so, what are those type of programs that you might be doing that may differ from place to place?
Are we going to talk about the whole appendix? This appendix?
Yes, I was going to go through a couple of other examples.
Because I thought it was really cool.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's very good information. It's helpful information. It really, you can really be dumbfounded by the cost of things sometimes, but without some real explanation and I think correlated examples, it's sometimes hard to understand. So this is the first one. The next one we thought was kind of interesting to consider with Madison Public Library in Wisconsin. A little bit smaller, about 120,000 square feet of space, $30 million budget. Both of these were additions and renovations, so that's also important to know. And in every project, and especially in this early stage, I think you need to be looking at a range of potential costs versus a fixed, this is the number, and it's not going to go up and down, because again, this is a document suggesting building program, not design so much, and I think there's a lot of things that can be chosen and through a design process where you might be a little less expensive, or maybe there's some choices made where you want to have a longer lifespan of things there, it might be a little bit more costly. So this building is 250, where the prior Oklahoma one was 360. This example in Cedar Rapids is a brand new library. It's I guess we've also included how many floors are on these these examples and so forth. But 94,000 square feet of space. The budget here $49 million, and the total square foot cost and 521. It was completed in 2013. This complete brand new library.
So it's a 521 square foot
Cost.
Was it a LEED building? I mean, what made it?
Well, a couple of things with this project is that it had a devastating flood, and they had also then some FEMA money and insurance money and capital budget, and so they used it.
I got
and
it.
if anybody's ever been there, I mean, it is a wonderful building. It is a great environment. The space is exceptional. It's an icon in this iconic building in this new.
What's the population of Cedar Rapids?
I couldn't tell you that.
I love that statistic of city population
Yeah.
size. I don't know Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
I'm going to say smaller than Ann Arbor.
I'm Googling it right now.
Yeah.
Great.
132,000.
Oh,
wow.
Higher
It's
up.
the city of Ann Arbor, smaller than service.
Yeah.
So on this building too, there's
What's their service area? Okay, thank you.
they did incorporate some outdoor space. They have a nice rooftop terrace. You'll see that referenced in the program here. We talked about some outdoor space for Ann Arbor Library, whether that be a plaza or maybe it could be a rooftop terrace. Another example here, Columbus Metropolitan Library, again, an urban library. The real difference here, though, is that there is no new square footage. So it's all a complete existing renovation. And the kind of rectangular form at the bottom right there is the original Carnegie Library. That was renovated prior to this project we're citing here. I should also take this opportunity to say these are colleagues of ours, friends and other firms that have done these projects. These are not HBM projects, but they are really great projects. And here the total square footage is 230,000 square feet, but it already was there. It just was a complete interior renovation. So the square foot cost $35 million project, $152 a square foot. So that gives you a little kind of perspective on renovation.
Do you know how old the existing structure was?
Well, the Carnegie is sometimes early 1900s. I don't know the date exactly. The addition that was put on was, I believe, late 80s or 90, late 80s probably, and maybe 90, 91. And it was done really, I think, it suited this renovation well because it was pretty open space. It wasn't a lot of compartmentalized space. So even when you think about, 20 years ago, trying to design so that you didn't have hard walls that you really had to move in the future, I think they were benefited from that. And so, again, also reflected in the square foot cost, 230,000 square feet of renovation for only $152 a square foot. Now this project in Wichita, we did have a big part in. This is the Central Library for downtown Wichita. We did all the programming, planning, initial concept design for the project. This is a brand new building, 2 levels, 105,000 square feet of total space, and a $34 million project, $326 a square foot. This project just opened just late last year. So this building, even though it's about 40,000 shy of what your building program is suggesting, was on a site where they were able to do it really in 2 floors and maximize the adjacencies that they were looking for.
What was on the site previously?
Well, this was in this particular project, we also evaluated their existing building, which was the only AIA award-winning structure in Wichita. So it was a great building, but it was landlocked. It was next to their, what do they call the event center? They have a name for that, but we couldn't expand their existing building, and it was kind of a brutal building, actually. It had a lot of solidness to it. They couldn't get Wi-Fi to work in the building at all. It was just such a big stone. So what City of Wichita is developing beyond the river that borders the city, and there was some there's some museums that have been built up on that other side of the river, right from the downtown proper area. And this site, I don't actually remember what was on the site. There might have been a, I don't know, I don't recall, but it is in a good location, and that the whole city is expanding to, I think it's the west, and there's more housing development and multi-use buildings that are happening on the other side of the river. Okay. At one point, there was some discussion about co-locating spaces within this library. And we talked a little bit about that, perhaps, in a building program to make it kind of a broader destination. And so a couple other examples, which are really interesting projects, but the costs can skyrocket. This is in Austin, the Austin Central Library, 198,000 square feet of space, $125 million budget, so $631 a square foot, completed in 2017. Brand new building, all new, no existing space. And then Calgary Public Library just opened last year. It's 240,000 square feet of space, so quite a bit larger.
Has anyone been to this one?
No, just opened.
It looks amazing. Yeah. I saw this picture and I thought
it is. But it's also 760. Yeah. What is that number there? 700 some.
86. 786.
Yeah. We're going to visit there. It's highlighted in Library Journal, I think, last month. There's some additional photos of it, but we have a trip planned to go see the library, I think, in February, I believe, or March. So I'm excited to see it. You know, this library, like the library in Aarhus, Denmark, is really a central destination for civic elements. There's more in it than just the library. Here in this example, and in the Dock 1 library in Denmark, the transit light rail runs through the building.
That's cool.
There's a lot of things that are being done that are a bit more, I think, civic-minded to getting people there. And when they're there, they're doing more and more things.
And that firm, they're doing the train station in Detroit?
Right? Snowhetta?
They're not? Okay.
No, I think...
they're doing some master planning in the board land.
Okay.
So
they're doing something, but they're not doing
They're doing
the
a little
renovation.
master planning of the site.
Okay, thank you.
The last example we wanted to include was San Diego Central Library, a very large project, 497,000 square feet, budget of $184 million, so $372 a square feet. So you can see in this document there are some correlations between the square foot cost. There's some deviations in how big the building is, and thus a bigger building, more money. But you know, you could probably think anywhere from $350 to $800 in this wider spectrum of kind of examples.
I visited this library. There's considerable philanthropic money that came through to fund this.
There is.
And there's a school.
Right, there's also a school.
Right.
There was a lot of philanthropic money for Calgary as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Madison had a lot of, all of their spaces were named. What about Austin? You were in Austin too, right?
I didn't get a chance.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sure they have.
Yeah. So we have this, all of this data table for this that talks about its square footage, its cost, and I think the thing that is important to recognize here with a building document, building program, and planning is what might this mean to Ann Arbor if you were looking at 150,000 square feet of space. And so we have suggested that based on, well, our knowledge and history of library projects and the examples that are been cited, And one other step we took, we talked with a local construction company, very reputable Ann Arbor-based construction company that we've worked with before as well. And we asked them, here's our program, here's what we're thinking of trying to accomplish here. What do you think the cost is here right in this market in Ann Arbor, downtown, especially building in the city? So all of that comes to a recommendation that suggests $60 to $70 million for about 150,000 square foot library. That would be $400 to $466 square foot. So as I said earlier, a range is appropriate because this is suggesting the ideas you might want to consider. It's not the design, and I think as you move through design, you have opportunities to put more money in certain areas than in others, or adjust that budget accordingly. Maybe it's based on available funding, and things can be considered more in depth as you move into that. So a range at this point is what's recommended.
Excuse me, can I ask a question about price per square foot and whether or not there are general rules about how many levels it's spread over? I mean, can we make a rule? Are there rules like price per square foot tends to go down if you have more levels or fewer levels?
Yeah, it does have a little bit of an impact on that. I think when you have multiple floor plates and elevated structure, the higher you go, there may be some increase in cost of square feet.
Increase in cost.
But at this stage, this range that we're suggesting is a range that could really accommodate A, B, or C. That's another thing that might be a bit more identified as you start into your design process. And the last section then is what we call next steps. On page 63 here, we highlight a few things. Basically, it's your big decisions now where to go and how can you work through a process that finds a site that might accommodate your need. Evaluate things that are needed to support that building, site utilities, and all of those elements, parking considerations. How do you want to handle that? Should the building be designed to accommodate any tenants? I mentioned earlier there were some of those examples that showed the opportunities to have rental space. Maybe it's a located space that has a common kind of a civic component, or maybe it's just rental space for office or something in the building that is allowing you to generate some income, like with the school in San Diego. Right. And then the tools you might need to move ahead in next steps, and I think one of those things that might be considered is to take this document and evolve it a little further with what is generally called test fits, so that you begin to look at any potential site or this existing building, or you have an opportunity to start to concept the building. And it's not a complete design process, but it's a process that starts to bring more definition to this, that you can better understand how the pros and cons of your building program would work on a particular site, or that particular site, if you're building more floors or you have other constraints, might suggest a higher cost of the construction. Those are the type of things that might come out of an exercise like that. And so this document really is the first piece that brings everything together in one place, that suggests what you'd like to do in a urban downtown library. But there's a lot more things to be considered as you would move forward. So that is the broad overview, hitting the highlights of the document. I think if you read through already, you have a good sense of the depth of it. But is there any questions, or is there anything you'd like me to elaborate on further?
Can you speak to, so this is the beginning, or no, just one phase of the process, because this is a cumulative report of the work that you've already done with the trustees and staff over a period of, how long is it? been?
It's been 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
5 months. So with other projects that you've developed after the program evaluation, what is the timing for the other phases?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to consider with the timing. I think first, I think the board needs to consider, yourself when you think the time is to move into that next phase. If you're asking about what we call those test fits,
right.
I think that they probably take about the same amount of time that the building program took to develop to get to a point where you have enough concept developed to really understand pros and cons about a specific site. And then also, if you have, it depends on how many sites you're evaluating and how many of those you want to take to that level. In Charleston, West Virginia, we're working with their central library right now, and when we first started, they had identified 32 sites.
Oh.
And when we came on board,
I don't think we have 32.
They narrowed it down. Yeah, well, Charleston, they have more opportunities, a lot of vacant buildings and such. But when we came on board, there were 16 sites.
Okay.
And so we really quickly eliminated 8 of them without really doing a test fit, by just working with the library and coming in, visually seeing it, and defining what hurdles there would be that were really obvious. Okay. And so then we got it down to really 8 viable sites, and did a bit more developed test fit for those, but to get to the top 3. So we went from 8 then to 3. To get to 3, it took quite a while, because it was compiled by, there was a consultant on board. The library brought on a realtor, commercial realtor, and the couple of those sites came about without us even doing anything about it as we were going through the process. And so as you're doing it, we ended up going back and reevaluating some other ones. And I think it took over about a year to really go from 8 to 3 to then 1 recommendation. Okay. And that was evaluating concept design, pros and cons about how the program would work, and then developing cost parameters for that.
Thank you.
That I think section of work too is not what you would really consider your full design for whatever the project you would be. It'd be
right.
More of concepting, and that's exactly the process the Wichita Central Library went through.
Okay.
So.
Are there any other questions from folks? Or?
I have a wonky question. So you come at this story from the perspective of an architect. I come from the perspective of a fundraiser, someone who thinks about capital campaigns. The biggest one I've been involved in was a public TV station. This is straight up capital, for a building that was $22 million, and it was a refurb of a building. Yeah. So when we start thinking over 30, 40, I think, okay, that's a lot of money coming from a relatively small community. You have experience in the architecture piece. Have you worked with communities where the fundraising feasibility part of coming together with the money has been something you've seen done up close? So what I'm really asking is, are there communities that have done that really well that you can recommend we talk to?
I can, yeah. And in fact, we're not campaign fundraising specialists, right. But in our practice, in 41 years of designing libraries, when I first started with the firm over 20 years ago, everything was mainly a bond issue. There's a referendum or a ballot issue of some sort. That still required, though, boots on the ground and running a campaign and developing information and material and getting the word out to bolster support. Today, we're seeing a lot more balance between capital money that's been acquired either through a ballot or some other fashion, and then private funding. And so one project that comes to mind, it was a $28 million project. $18 million of it was privately funded. we're working through about $4 or $5 million of historic tax credit grant, tax credit, and then also within that city, new market tax credits. And that particular project had a little bit of a nest of a capital budget of about $5 or $6 million, but the rest of it was boots on the ground. Now, in that case, the library also hired a spokesman to run that fundraising campaign
director.
But you know, they did a whole rollout. We did community engagement. We were hand in hand with the library and their other consultants to develop it along those lines. So you're absolutely right. I think this is coming from an architectural or a space needs idea. I think you're also going to want to think when you do test fits, how do you start to build that campaign that looks at the funding?
It was when you started talking about test fits, I started thinking about, feasibility of a capital campaign and where the money comes from to do something like that, because it's, they go together. I mean, I would argue that capital comes before test fitting.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Josie, the last bond issue was, what was the amount that we were going to public for?
65, is that right, Eli?
Yeah.
65 million.
So this sort of lives in that, similarly in that zone. I'm just curious to know, from your point of view, some of the kind of higher level questions that the building program has provoked for you and the staff since you had a chance to review it.
I think for us, one of the things that we found in this process that's different from others are the scenarios, A, B, C, and looking at what's possible within adjacencies. I mean, we've done enough buildings now that we think that way, but this is the first time it's been done this way in such a big program, which I find personally helpful, but I think it's also helpful for anyone who's looking at this who's not looked at one before, because it makes sense. I mean, if you have this much square footage that you're looking at putting in a building, and you're putting it on something that's going to cause it to be 5 stories tall.
Yeah.
What can't be next to something, and how important is that to you? I mean, and that's when you start asking that question: how important is it that these things be adjacent, and what does that mean in terms of what sites do you look at, or what size is your building really? What don't you need to do, or what can't you not do? And those are the types of questions that you ask yourself when you're looking at building a site. I mean, I'm going to just use Westgate as the latest example for us. Westgate was a renovation, it was a tear out and a renovation, but it was a defined envelope with a very weird shape. So you want all the things you have in the traditional branches in this space, but you have to do it with these curved walls, slanted entrances, and a place off to the side that was the old library that's not in the sight lines of anything else. So how do you do it? First of all, do you do it? Do you use all that space? And if you do, where do things go? And it's a literal moving it around it's having shapes that represent things, really, and moving them around. And then making that decision to be able to see straight through. And then you start negotiating. This is where the fits start in terms of when you talk about utility infrastructure and what can happen on a site, what can't happen on a site. This is rented space.
Your attention, please.
So,
the library will close in 15 minutes. The internet stations will automatically shut off at 8:55 p.m. Please make any final copies at this time and take all materials to be checked out to a self-check station or to the circulation desk by 8:55 p.m. Thank you.
So in that space, it was, will the shopping center owners allow us to open out the back? Because parking was going to be a big deal if that weren't possible. And of course, you know what happened. But before we would go too far down a path, spending money on design, we needed to know that answer. It's the same thing, but it's much bigger. It's much bigger. So I find the way this is done to be a step ahead in thinking about that.
Yeah.
For anyone looking at it, I think for us, and bringing archives bringing archives into the building, adding a reading room, which we don't have, adding an auditorium, a space that we don't have. That's a space that's flexible for what we did with Whopper, but also one that has like theater seating, I mean, sort of thing. We don't have that now. Doubling the size of the children's room, and we put that on the first floor ideally, but if you look at one of those scenarios, it's not.
Yeah.
So what does that mean when you start pulling strollers in the library? How many elevators do you have? Where are they? You know, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But those are the types of questions that you have to ask yourself when you start doing this. And what are you going to, what are your competing objectives? What are you going to give up? Because something's going to go. And then site fits help you decide if, you know, what possible opportunities you have. So I'm pleased, thank you. I'm very pleased with the way it's presented. It makes it a lot easier to work with in chunks. It's not just this huge thing. And I know it's not a design, it's not even close.
Right.
So.
What can you tell me a little bit more about the rationale for bringing the archive back into the downtown building?
I love that.
Can I interject before on that question, before to pick up on one of the things Ms. Parker said?
Please.
And Ms. Sherman, it speaks to your kind of parallel thought of fundraising. And so you're right, this is not a design, but it as it evolves and you begin to look at some of those spaces you just rattled off that you don't currently have, when you start to put those in place in test fits, you start to then begin to develop material that you could use for fundraising. And I think any of those spaces you just mentioned, it'd be hard pressed for people to understand, okay, I get why the library needs this type of space. And so I think paralleling your thought of development of fundraising with, you know, the building test fits and so forth, they do play off of one another, and the material that you would continue to work with here would help that.
So the archive is the community's local history that's publicly accessible, and we have many people who ask us for access to that material, and the way we're situated now, we find it very difficult to give people public access in a building that's rental, that's off-site, with very few staff in it at any given time. So having the archive downtown does two things. It's access. It's also about development. People want to give us their material and do. And then sometimes people want to give you the support that it needs to be digitized and to be utilized. Having a reading room adjacent to that archive space makes sense because that's where you can have people looking at that material, but you can also have people using a reading room in the traditional sense. And that's that space, the way we know the success of Westgate's reading room. So having a place like that in the downtown library, but near the people who do work that aligns with the use of a reading room in many ways makes even better sense.
Yeah, I think, you know, clearly from like sort of mission perspective, it makes a lot of sense. It is, I wonder really sort of in terms of the demand, what it truly looks like, and if we can sort of drill down on that over the course of the next year or so, because it's an expensive proposition to bring back, you know, by the square foot, like to bring back the archive into the downtown space, right? Well, and if it's not being, you know,
I think it has potential use that it cannot possibly satisfy now, so that I think
so it's like to sort of
building
anticipate what the demand might look like, right?
And we can't measure it because we can't allow it. I mean, we aren't able. We aren't able to open it.
But I think it has like a lot of potential benefit on the fundraising side. Like when you think about the last project and people are like, what do you need with an auditorium? It's a library. But if you say like, we don't have a reading room and our archives are in rental space, like I think that could mean something to the community that like we're going to bring our community's local history back to the core of the city. I think that could really mean something to people. That
I agree.
Might outweigh the potential costs.
We have historical libriries in town that are used, right? We've got the Bentley,
and they all have very specific purpose, and they're well used, and they're supported. The local history aspect of what we do, the Ann Arbor News work, and some of the other newspapers, and some of the other matter that has been donated to us, it's different, it's unique, and it's accessible in the sense of we make it accessible digitally, and on, but by having it on location, It's a different type of accessibility.
It's accessible content-wise too, in the way that like the whole history of the state is like not applicable to people here in the same way that like I was at a salon today and someone was like, I'm so interested in the South University, all the changes, and the director or the owner, and I was like, there's a new Instagram account that the public library has, you should follow it. And I showed her the archive's new Instagram account of the vintage pictures, and she's like, what? And like put it in her phone right away. And I think it's like something that it's content that is uniquely ours that we should really like own and be proud of. I think because I think we're leaning too much on the university for those other collections.
Right. And those are not all publicly, or
they're not all accessible. No.
Right.
And much of those collections are not digitized, and there's no plan to do it anytime soon.
And even the Ford Library is, you have to get special permission to access.
They're accessible.
They're accessible. Anyone can go to them. Right.
I would say, so this is sort of educational for me to think about, but it also leads to this other question of the kind of opportunity cost embedded in how do you kind of animate and think about that then programmatically, and sort of developing a bit more of a vision about that, about how that space is animated and how it kind of spreads out into the library in physical ways would be pretty interesting.
Like our Becoming, wasn't that, there was a Becoming American series. That would be maybe something that could speak to archival work too. So I'm sure there's opportunities.
It also, it leads to the other question that I have, or the other reaction, which is, at what point do we sort of do the analysis of the kind of operational outlay that will require for an increase of space and increase in programs and so on, so that the cost of this building is not 70 million and then you're done, but it's actually 70 million and then whatever the sort of increment is in terms of our annual operating.
Right, and that's all part of what you can evaluate when you look at your test fits. You can begin to look at both utility cost, operational costs of the building, and also look at staffing costs and operational costs that would differ from where you currently are to maybe where you might go. All of that we've worked with libraries to project, and then as your timeline evolves, another factor when you're considering budgets is putting a factor in for increases, inflation, and
right.
I think since the downturn, things have turned around significantly in the construction market. It's not only hard to find trades to work on projects, but the cost of the raw materials have gone up, and so you're looking at when you're doing these test fits, you're looking at bricks and mortar costs, but then you're looking at long-term utility and operating costs for the building. You're looking at operational costs from a standpoint of staffing, and then if your timeline is a few years out that you think it takes to raise this dollar, then you've got to put in that factor, because you got to make sure you're covering things and everything that you're the big ideas you're trying to implement, that you actually, when you get to the point of implementing them, you can afford it. You don't get caught without thinking of something.
Question.
Sorry. This is sort of the last thing, but I know the part of the project is sort of to find the Cadillac version, right?
Your attention, please. The library will close in 5 minutes. If you have materials to check out, just go to a self-check station or to the circulation desk now. Thank you.
That this is sort of the deluxe version, everything that we would aspire and anticipate having in the building, which there hasn't been a reaction that this doesn't seem unachievable, but I might. So I wonder why there's not a $40 million version alongside the $70 million version, or if that's something that we need, or I'm just testing the assumption here.
Well, the assumption was to do what would you do if you could?
Yeah.
And then when you see what you have to do it, then you talk. Then you question your own assumptions.
Yeah.
And that's when the work is. That's what the work is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My question is about the half-block size proposal. I think within the downtown area, we don't see a lot of large buildings like that, and it seems unlikely we could find a site downtown that would suit that. So I wonder, like, why you chose to include it. Like, I like the adjacencies certainly, but like otherwise, within our context in which we're operating, it sounds hard to achieve.
Right. Well, one of the things we didn't do was identify specific sites, so we didn't get into that, although it was hard to not realize that there may be a couple of sites that can do that, maybe one. And I think that it's, again, as Josie mentioned, if you looked at it from an ideal setting, maybe that is ideal. Maybe you can't achieve that, but at least you've planned it out and you've thought about it, and it informs you better on what maybe the plan B is. And that plan B doesn't mean it needs to be any less of a good plan. It just gives you those parameters. So I agree. I don't think there are many, maybe more than one even. And then you could also think of, well, is there anything that can be removed, demolished, that could create that, and maybe that's an opportunity. But I think that there's probably only a few of the quarter lots too, And so I think you're really looking, when you get to that point, strategically, maybe what can be taken off the map to provide for that, including this site here too. I mean, this site can be a new building too if we, thought that you could, take this out. And speaking to efficiencies and operational costs and all that sort of thing, that's another thing when you try to balance a new building versus a renovation. You look at that as well. What can you achieve better in a new building, both operationally and cost?
That you hope to pick up some savings in certain ways.
Yeah.
Of the libraries that were listed as comparable peers, which ones are independent? I mean, or versus part of a city budget and city government?
I'm not sure I know all of that. Well, the one I could speak of, Wichita, which we were involved with, was a city-driven project, budget-wise. I really couldn't tell you without having to.
Columbus City. I think they're all.
Columbus is.
Is it a district?
Independent, yeah.
Is it independent?
Yeah.
Okay. Calgary is a city.
Okay.
We could look
City.
into that and follow up. Charleston, the one we're doing the main in Charleston, West Virginia, is independent.
Okay.
Central Library.
Great. Do we have any remaining questions? Or
the only other thing I want to respond
you
to is
had like
why
three
does
last
sorry,
questions.
I'm very excited about this. Why does anything have to be in the basement? Which
versus a parking lot?
Which is just which is just a sort of philosophical question. I think it's interesting that there's usable, like public space that's built into two of these three plans in a sort of lower level.
Right.
And I'm sort of I'm curious about the rationale for that versus
like Montreal had the kids section was in down an escalator off of, so it didn't feel like
I love the practicality of this room, but I think I'm a little scarred
Right.
by being in it so much.
I think that's a very good point. I think when you think about the opportunities in a new design, a basement doesn't necessarily maybe carry the same feel or connotation that it does.
Your attention, please.
Yeah.
The library is now closed.
And yet, we're still here.
But I think in most cases, most of the diagramming was more storage and mechanical infrastructure. I think when you think about a big, large event space, and in the document we use some terms like black box theater or something that's very flexible.
Flexible venue.
A venue like the Seattle Public Library has, where you come in the lobby there, and that large event space spills out from the lobby right down into that lower level. Now, that particular building, too, has an access point out from that lower level, so you can enter in two ways. So it's not quite really a basement.
That's what UMA has. It has its theater in the basement, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so does DIA has that too, right? They have their film theater off in the back.
It's just,
and I think there are those type of spaces you could really realize in a nice way in that lower.
In that kind
in
of
the
lower level idea, yeah.
Before we say goodbye to Peter, there's one clarification question. Victoria asked the question about stacking up floors. You have 5 floors versus 2 floors, A to C, I think. But property acquisition is your biggest expense, correct? And in the square footage we were looking at, we weren't looking at property acquisition?
No.
So really, once you add to that half a city block property acquisition, then your costs go way up for that, correct?
Right, and that is
Okay.
a very important distinction to make. It's footnoted in those
Yeah.
tables
Okay,
that
okay.
that cost is really what we would call bricks and mortar
Yeah.
and furnishings.
Okay, so that's why when you were asking that question, I wanted to make sure that we all had it in our minds, like, yeah, 2 floors looks great, but what you have to pay to get that.
Again, those are the things that, you know, you would evaluate with this program to
Yeah.
say, okay, I have this opportunity. Maybe
Right.
do that here, let's draw it out, let's look what it might mean, both from a functionality standpoint, cost standpoint. Is there really a half a city block available? Those sort of things.
So, Peter, before we wrap up, would you mind giving us a little bit of background about your firm and how you specialize in
I'd love
this
to,
area
yeah.
and how you're different from different architecture firms?
Well, I think the first distinction is we're 95% of our work is library work. We don't do much other work. It's really focused with libraries. With
Right.
libraries, it's public, academic, medical, law, everything within the library realm. So there's some diversity in that. We have a practice where we work nationally. We're all over the country. We're based in Cleveland, but we specialize in libraries, and so we have practice that is figures out how to do work from afar. In some cases, it's cross country. Some cases, it's right in our next door. We have a staff of 18, so it's a modestly sized office of architects and interiors, and everybody in our office knows about libraries. So probably a real big distinction between us and another firm is that if we work with a client, you work with me and Renee or anybody else we assign to the project as a point person. When they take work back to the office to develop it, they're not handing it off to somebody that's designing an office building or something different. Everybody in the office is working with libraries, for both from the interior and the architectural realm. And we all spend a great deal of time with organizations, American Library Association, a lot of state conferences, Library Journal, speaking about libraries, learning about libraries, and it is a passion of the office. I mean, it is really important to us. We love what we do. We don't think there's a better civic space for anyone's community than a library. And personally, so 1976 the firm was founded, and over 41 years we've designed over 400 libraries. That's a pretty deep portfolio, and probably half of those are new buildings, half of them are expansion renovations. We also have a pretty significant amount of work in Carnegie libraries. But personally for me, my mother was a librarian. I grew up kind of in that kind of vein, and working. I've been with the firm now a little over 20 years. My mother was so happy with projects that she could see us doing, and she attended a lot of those openings. So and our staff, we have some staff that spouses are librarians, and it's kind of a unique, special group, and I think that we bring a lot to our clients from not only the architecture, interior design, but all aspects of campaign support, development, and so that kind of in a nutshell, a little bit about HBM.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for all for this work is fabulous.
Thank
you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on, Karen, do we have additional citizens' comments? Oh, okay.
It's all right, Jess.
Just come on up.
Just come on up. Jess Lee talk. Yeah.
Yes.
You're a known.
repeat offender of the.
That's a pretty accurate description. Hi, I'm Jess Letaw. I'm a renter in Ann Arbor. I moved here for school, as many people did, and my first encounter with the community was when Josie talked to our class, talking to us about the architecture of Traverwood Library. So my introduction to the community outside of campus was really through AADL. I am super excited about buildings. I love talking about buildings and I love thinking about buildings. I feel the same way about the library, and so thinking about a library building is a special treat. I was thinking a little bit earlier today about the Detroit activist Grace Lee Boggs, who said it is our right and our duty to shake the world with a new dream. I am excited for what the building and the place of a new library could be, and I just kind of wanted to be a voice for boldness and excitement in whatever that is. I mean, the process is, it's really fun for those of us that geek out on spreadsheets and 63-page reports, but the building is going to be what ends up serving us all, and so I'm just advocating for architecture with a capital A, and I'm delighted to see HBM and really thoughtful partners on board. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Do we have any other? Great. Well, thank you for joining us at the beginning of this year. We will see you next month. Meeting's adjourned.
Yay!